Well, actually, you can just start saying, are you going to say a piece?
Yeah. So basically, guys, just giving you a bit of a background. Last year was a massive learning curve for us, especially riding in the heat. So I wanted to be on the ball this year, sort of hydration wise. Um, Pretty quickly, I was on the lookout for somebody to sort of come along and help us out in this department. I was following Rico online, sort of watching what Rico was doing, different things. And then a friend of mine was actually training with Rico on one of his programs and recommended him. So I reached out to Rico. He quickly responded, and we had a meeting pretty early in the year. We met up, had a chat, and straight away, thankfully, Rico agreed to join the team and sort of come on board and help everybody out. Um, and yeah, Rico's been great. He's come on board with a wealth of knowledge. And one thing we've done already with Rico was we've been involved doing sweat testing, which Rico will explain about. And he'll go into some detail of what our plan is this year. And hopefully, you guys can take some sort of information from it. Sorry about that. And yeah, and just learn and pick up on some things we are currently doing. And hopefully, it's going to benefit everybody in the event, basically. So that's the plan, and that's a bit of background to how Rico's come on board.
Cool. That'll do, Jim. That'll do. So I don't know if I know any of you or you know me or whatever. I'm actually videoing this from the corner here, actually. Well, I've got my camera here. I'm videoing it from the corner and I'll upload it as a YouTube video. So you guys can look back at some of this because it might be a lot of information and you might not be able to take it all in. And I think after just this short Zoom meeting, I think you'll have a way clearer understanding of hydration and how it can affect you, and you'll have some actionable steps as well that you can take forward into this race coming up. So let's begin. Everyone good? Like I said, I can't see many people. If you don't mind putting your camera on, chuck it on, unless you're naked or something. Anyway, right, so me and Jamie got talking about this 6-day enduro and how we wanted a performance coach on it. And I know, first of all, the 6-day enduro isn't a multi-day event. It's a multi-day event. It's actually 2 enduros back to back. And knowing it's going to be a 6-dayer, I knew hydration was going to be probably the biggest defining factor behind you guys performing well, certainly in days 4, 5, and 6. And drinking to thirst has proven to be ineffective, and you can put together, we can add some science to this now. And I think actually enduro is a little bit late to the park with stuff like strength conditioning and sports science. So I think just a little bit of information can go really far with you guys. So first of all, humans are the sweatiest animals on earth. I don't know if you knew that or not. We have this system of leaking fluid onto our skin, and that's evaporated, and that's what keeps our core temperature where it should be. And that's actually one of the biggest defining factors with us being such good endurance animals. Hundreds of years ago in the African savannah, that's how we would have caught something like a deer or a gazelle. We would have run it down over a few days, and we would have run it into heat exhaustion. So the fact that we could put fluid on our skin kept our core temperature where it should be, and gives us that incredible endurance. Like, there's not many animals out there that could run the Kona Ironman, for example, in the time that a human can do it. So we're incredible endurance athletes and persistence hunters. That's what it's called. That's how we would have run down a fast animal like that and run them into heat exhaustion. And probably would have been a pretty horrible way to go, actually, to have something chasing you over a few days like that. But your core regulation is in kind of a narrow band. And if your core temperature gets too high, you'll die. So hydration is a huge factor. And people do actually die on these 6-day events, don't they? It's that's happened before. Before you die, obviously, you'd have massive performance drop, hospital, that type of thing. But we hear that dehydration is bad. Why is dehydration bad for you? It's because the fluid that you lose, a lot of it comes from your blood. So as you get dehydrated, your blood volume will drop. So if your blood volume drops, your heart is going to have to work a lot harder to move that blood around. There's going to be less red blood cells. You're going to have more effort for the same or worse performance. It's not going to be very good at all. And there's a saying that 2% dehydration causes up to a 25% loss in performance. I think Lucozade used to use that as their marketing campaign, possibly. I can't remember where I heard that. But what they're talking about with that 2%, the number they're talking about is 2% of your body weight lost in fluid. So if you were 80 kilos, that would be 1.6 kilos lost in fluid through dehydration. That's actually a fair amount. But not only is there a 25% drop in performance, there's 25 to 40% drop in reaction time. A drop in reaction time, which was certainly going to cost you later in these kind of endurance events. And when you're looking at things like motorsport, that's why they pay so much attention to their hydration and dehydration. So if you look at the variables behind why you might be dehydrated on an event, you could have a whiteboard and you can list 20 things probably between us. You could have, obviously the temperature, how humid it is, what kit you're wearing. Maybe your body armor is heavier than someone else's. What clothing you're wearing. If it's windy, you'll be dehydrated quicker. So they're all things you can't really control, but there are a couple of things that you can control. One of them is measuring your sweat volume, how much sweat you lose per hour. That's a really straightforward test that I'm going to explain in a moment. And measuring your salt-sweat ratio, which is how much salt comes out of you per litre of sweat. Now, that's what we did down at Precision Fuel and Hydration. I don't know if you've ever heard of those guys. This is what their logo looks like. When I heard of them, I saw their logo and I actually recognized it. I'll hold up to my camera up there as well so you guys can see that. So the salt sweat test, sorry, I'll come to that in a minute, but the sweat volume test is pretty straightforward. Working out how much fluid comes out of you per hour. Now that can change. You can get better or worse at sweating. The better you are at sweating, the more you will lose. And some people have been shown to lose up to 3.5 litres of sweat per hour. And that's massive. If you're a high volume sweater, it could potentially be really, really bad for you in an endurance event. Now, because water is easy to measure, a litre of water weighs a kilogram, you could easily, on an indoor bike or something, or on your motorbike out, on a test day, weigh yourself before you ride, preferably with as little on as possible, right? If you're at home on an indoor bike, I would weigh myself completely naked, keep it to yourself, of course. Then I would try and simulate an effort that you guys would be doing for about an hour, and then weigh yourself after and see how much you've lost. If you're taking on fluid during that ride, which is totally fine, again, know that if you've got a 500 ml bottle, that weighs half a kilo. If it's all gone, you know that you took on half a kilo of water, you can deduct that from the total. So that sweat volume test, that's super easy for you guys to do. I would try and do that if you can between now and the event, just to give you an idea of how much fluid actually comes out of your skin. The salt sweat test, which me and the guys did a couple of weeks ago, that's more complex, and you're probably not going to have time to do that in between the event now. Between now and the event, it's in 2 weeks, isn't it? 2 weeks yesterday, I think we would have been flying out. Now that measures how much salt per litre of sweat comes out of you. Now that can fluctuate massively. So a low salt sweater might lose 200 milligrams of salt per litre of sweat, and a high salt sweater could lose 2,000 milligrams of salt per litres of sweat. So that's 10 times different from a low salt sweater to a high salt sweater. So it makes you understand a little bit that even though two people could be on the same event, the exact same race, you could have completely different hydration strategies. So at Precision Hydration, I have no affiliation with them, by the way. They're just a solution to a problem. So what they did is they measured how much salt was coming out of all the guys' sweat, and then you can supplement your water with the amount of salt that you lose. So I'll just show you an example. So the average is about 1,000. That's actually slightly less. It's 950 milligrams of salt per litre. So there is a tablet there, which is 1,000 milligrams of salt per litre. So you'd put that in your water. If you're a lower salt sweater, you'd use that one. If you're a higher salt sweater, you'd use that one. What you find is most of the off-the-shelf electrolyte tablets are way undergunned. They're usually down at about 500 to 600 milligrams of salt per litre, which isn't even the average. Some of them have a stronger option, which will probably be closer to the average. but it's pretty important. Now, out of all the electrolytes that make it to the skin in your sweat, 80% of that is salt, then is potassium, then magnesium, and then calcium. But 80% is salt, and salt is the only one out of those 4 main electrolytes that you don't have your own stores from which to draw from in your body. The other 3 you do. So it's really important that you pay attention to that and try and get, like I said, if you can't do the salt sweat test, I would go for the average, which is the 1,000 one at minimum. Because if you're, like I said, everything is multiplied over a multi-day event. You don't want to be playing catch up. So knowing how important salt is and trying to replace it, obviously there's going to be salt in your food as well, but you want to try and get, as close as you can. So the conclusion is to kind of this little monologue that I've been on is try and measure your sweat volume as best you can. If you can't, there's something called the Galpin equation. All right. Like I said, there's a lot to know here, but I'm recording this and I'll stick it on YouTube and you guys can watch it later. So the Galpin equation this is for fluid loss. It's 2 milliliters of fluid per kilogram that you weigh every 15 minutes during your race. So to give you an example, if you weighed 75 kilos, that would be 600 milliliters an hour, which is that, like a normal drink size bottle. If you weighed close to 100 kilos, it'd be that, which is quite a difference. But I'll repeat that. It's 2 milliliters of water per kilogram that you weigh every 15 minutes all day. Now, I know that it's hard, but what it gives you is a score as to whether you're doing well or not. What I mean by that is if you had a Camelback with 2 liters in it, you should know that if you weigh 75 kilos and you're doing one of these an hour, if you come back to the paddock after 2 hours, 2/3 of that Camelback should be gone. If you've still got 3/4 in there, you've got some catching up to do. So it just lets you know, if you gather some information and you try and implement it as best you can, it just lets you know if you're doing well or not. And like I said, on these type of events, you don't want to be playing catch up. That's really, really difficult. Northern Spain, I don't see it being very hot. It's not going to be life or death. Argentina last year was absolutely horrendous, I'm hearing. Probably expecting about 20 degrees, could go as high as about 24, 25. It's enough to matter, but it's not enough that you're going to really suffer. Let's see, what else have I got here? So yeah, try and measure, like I say, the Galpin equation to measure how much fluid comes out of you. And the salt, I would say, go for the average one, which would be that. If you want to buy these products online, they're, of course, you're available to come to your house. Now, fuel, not talking hydration, now talking food, doesn't concern me as much, because if you're low on energy, you'll just perform a little bit badly, whereas if you're low on hydration, of course, it can cause catastrophic things to you. That is also a gram rating for fuel as well, all right? So on an endurance event like this, it's 3 to 6 grams of carbohydrate per kilo that you weigh every day, which is, again, a fair amount. Now, you could get half of that from a supplement form and half of that from food. The more you can get from food, the better it's going to be for you. And it's a little bit more stable for your gastric system coming from food. Whereas if you overload on these gels and things and they cause you some real trouble, you're probably going to have shit all down the back of your legs during one of the tests, and that's not going to be any fun for anyone. So, of course, as with any supplement, you don't try it on race day. That's not the first time you ever try it on race day. And, people do try new things. What do you got? What have you got? Can I have some of that? And it's just not a good idea. You have to make sure your stomach is okay with any of this stuff. And like I said, the more you can have from food, the better that's going to be. Even though the gels and stuff might be faster acting, like I said, it can cause stomach. Has anyone ever had any stomach upsets or anything from any of this type of stuff? Or no, I'm usually got a bit of an iron stomach with it. It doesn't really bother me that much. And also there's a preload to the day and a postload after the day to help you fuel up before you ride and then help you recover when you get back. Now, what I would do with that is I would have a strong mix before you ride in the morning, And I know breakfast can be trouble for some people. I certainly wouldn't be able to eat on a race day. I'd really suffer with that. On a single day event, it wouldn't matter. You can run off your resources that you have, but on obviously a 6-day, you can't. You're going to run out of fuel pretty quick. So a preload, I would have something, a bottle, a normal size bottle with maybe 60 grams of carbohydrate in it in powder form. You can buy a tub of carbohydrate powder. I'd probably put 2 scoops. Whatever the scoop is worth, I'd put about 60 grams in there. And even if you're a low salt sweater, I'd put the high salt sweat sachet in there. So I've got some, so this is a 1500, right? I know I'm a high salt sweater. So I'd put loads of sugar in it, loads of salt. You would want that done 45 minutes before you race to give it time to kind of settle into you a little bit. And then 15 minutes before you race, I would probably have something like that. It's another 30 grams of carbohydrates with 100 milligrams of caffeine. Let me just hold it up to my camera there. So the extra little boost of carbohydrate and the kick of the caffeine will help that energy become more bioavailable and really jump into you and hopefully give you a flying start. And that preload, not the caffeine, but the preload with the 60 grams of carbohydrate and the 1500 of salt, I would probably have as soon as I stopped riding at the end of the day, while those receptors you have in your body are wide open to accept carbohydrate again, because that is your body's preferred energy source by far. Carbohydrate is the granddaddy of all energy sources, then fat and then protein. I don't care about protein really on an actual race weekend. During training, 12, 16 weeks before, whatever, fine for recovery, but the recovery I'm talking about on a race day is carbohydrate, carbohydrate, carbohydrate. And nothing special food-wise. We've already discussed all this, just normal food, chili and rice, pasta sauce, whatever it is, as much as you can eat. And that's, pretty much it. Like I said, the dangers of some of the I'm not worried about the post-loading, but like I said, the preload, if you haven't had a whopping amount of carbohydrate in a bottle with salt in one kind of strong dose like that before the race, I wouldn't try it on a race day. Does anyone have any questions about anything? I know most of your microphones are off. But, I didn't want to bombard you with too much information, just give you some stuff to work from for now.
Do you want to touch on the temperatures we talked about, Rico, of the fluids?
Oh yeah, with cooling down. Yeah, so it was brought up, me and Jim were talking about it, would cold water be more effective at the paddock, at the stops, where you get to refuel? I would have said no, I probably wouldn't. Because if you load up your stomach with cold water, it can kind of sit there for a while before you can absorb it to be used as a hydration fluid. And it can kind of upset your stomach a little bit. Chris down at Precision Hydration said it would bring your core temperature down ever so slightly. There would be that transfer of energy from hot to cold. But I said, would it be more effective to have something cold on the back of your neck? That's what I thought would be the best thing. He said, yes. That is the absolute gold standard thing you can do. So have you seen those kind of physiotherapy ice bags with the big screw top, and it's kind of like a soft bag you can fill with ice? I would have them at the paddocks on the back of your neck. That's going to be the most efficient way, fast, to cool down your core temperature. What do you reckon, Jim?
He also mentioned if somebody was struggling under the armpits, and extreme cases, helmet off and on the top of the head.
Yeah.
Well, they were the three areas he said if somebody was overheating, struggling, ice on the skin was the best way to sort of cool somebody down.
Yeah.
Not plug loads and loads of icy water.
Yeah, right. So wherever the blood comes nearest the skin and is on the way up to the head, effectively on the back of the neck there. Yeah, wrists, armpits, that type of thing, where you can get it close to the blood that's traveling through under the skin. And being wet as well. If you're not particularly sweaty, then hose down with some water will help you. Things that are wet cool down 25 times faster than things that are dry. So, cold water down your back or something, yeah, that would probably help. There would definitely be that transfer of energy again from hot to cold there. Anything I've forgotten, Jim?
just wanted to say, one time, sort of, I raced in Sardinia. It was really hot, and I don't know if it's the right word to say I dehydrated by drinking so much, but I drank so much sort of plain fluids and didn't replenish. I almost felt drunk and dehydrated that way.
Right. Yeah, I can't remember the name of what it is when you. If your water is just water and it's too fluid, you'll piss it out. It's not good enough to absorb, which is why we're taking these measures, trying to get the salt-sweat ratio done. Because you're sweating out the salt, but if you're only replacing it with water, you're in trouble. And when you're really low on things like electrolyte and salt, it's not a case of just being able to power through. There will be systems in your body which will start to shut down. And, like I spoke about a moment ago, the dangers of possibly, if you have too much carbohydrate in your water all the time, there's a risk of your stomach passing it down to the gut because it recognizes it as food. And then you have diarrhea for one of the tests, which would be bad. But like I said to the elite guys, if you find you fucking shit yourself during the race, just get back to the paddock and I'll hose you down. I've done it before. It's not nice, but it might be something, might be part of the race. Hopefully not. But again, this precision fuel and hydration, I'll just show you some of the products they have. Like I said, they've got the electrolyte tablets, of different strengths. But if you guys don't know your salt-sweat ratio, which I'm assuming you don't, I would go for the 1,000. All right, that's bang on the average. Whereas, like I said before, the off-the-shelf stuff is underpowered. It's usually around 500 to 600. That's for people, I think, who are just going for a ride or going for a jog, not an elite athlete competing over 6 days. They have 1,500. This comes in the tube as well, like this, but these are just sachets. They gave us a bundle of stuff to go with, so you can obviously take that out with you and add it. They have 30 grams of carbohydrate in like a chew, which is a bit firmer. They have the 30 grams of carbohydrate, like I showed you just now, with the 100 milligrams of caffeine. You don't want to be abusing caffeine. It can cause you some trouble, especially with sleep on a 6-day thing. You don't want to be cutting short on your sleep. So they do have a regular 30 gram without the caffeine in it. Now, something like this, 30 grams, you might use that over 6 to 8 minutes. It might just be gone. It's that bioavailable. So if you've got one more test to go and you're not quite feeling it, bang. You can even absorb it through the mouth. That's how bioavailable it is. You don't have to pass it down to the stomach. You could swill it around in your mouth and digest it that way. That's how fast it is. Let me think. Anything else you want to cover, Jim?
No, I just wanted to try and pass as much of this sort of hydration knowledge we've got on to the other guys, just to make sure everybody's clued up. And like like you said, in the past we've had riders in the club team suffering and that type of thing. So we just want everybody to sort of be prepared as best as they can, so everybody performs their best. And feel free to ask questions or ask for help, because ultimately we all want to work together and sort of do the best collectively as we can. So don't be afraid to approach.
No, please do,
guys, and we'll help obviously as much as we can.
Yeah, where am I looking?
Paul.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, food preparation comes into this a lot. You mentioned carbs, and salts in the carbs. What's your view on the quality of different salts we can get nowadays? I hear a lot about Celtic salt. 80 odd minerals rather than just shitty white salt. That's when you got
yeah. Avoid table salt like the plague, really. The Celtic salts, the sea salts and stuff. Yeah, it does have a higher mineral content for sure. That's proven, and it's way better for you, definitely. Salt is one of the most important minerals we ever had. That was the first type of currency we ever had. We used to trade in salt. That's what salary means, how much salt somebody's worth. Sal is like Spanish, is it, for salt? It's really important. It's been vilified in the last sort of 20 years as causing high blood pressure and stuff. But if you're a fat bastard and you're inactive, then yeah, it's bad for you. But if you're moving and you're normal and you're lean, then all my food looks like a fucking winter wonderland, if I'm honest with you. I cover everything in a shitload of salt, and I have no trouble whatsoever. especially when you look at, like I was saying before, high salt sweaters and low salt sweaters. If you haven't had the test, you don't know where you are. And if you're a high volume sweater, if you sweat a lot and you're a high salt sweater and you don't know that, you're at a massive disadvantage. A massive disadvantage. So again, just in conclusion to all this shit I've been talking, try and measure your sweat volume, how much sweat comes out of you per hour. And you can do that by weighing yourself, trying to mimic the exercise on an indoor bike or going out on the bike and then losing all your clothes and weighing yourself again. But literally, if you can be completely naked on the scales, that's going to be the most accurate before and after. Even towel yourself down so there's no fluid on your skin so you're completely dry. That will give you the most accurate reading. If you can't do that, there's the Galpin equation, which is 2 milliliters of water per kilo every 15 minutes. And the salt sweat ratio, we're not going to be able to measure between now and then, but I would do that at some point if I was you guys. But just because you can't do that between now and the event, I would go for the 1,000, which is ever so slightly above average. You're going to be probably okay with that, most people. But the salt sweat ratio doesn't change your entire life. So I think it's 120 quid per athlete to be tested. And if you can get, 5 or 6 of you to go down there and share the fuel and get yourself tested, that's a piece of information you have for the rest of your careers. They found in some of these major sports teams, America are usually ahead of the UK in sports science. They were retesting athletes each year and their salt sweat ratio is exactly the same. Sometimes people would fluctuate a little bit, maybe more than they expected, but they would never put them in a new category. So they only started testing the new athletes each year. So that's quite an important piece of information as endurance athletes that you can take into the rest of your lives. If you're a high salt sweater, you want to know about it. If you're a low salt sweater, then you know. It doesn't really matter that much. Anyone else got any questions? I think we just about covered it. Like I said, I'm filming this from the side. I'll upload it as a YouTube video just so you guys can get the numbers, the grams per kilo and everything right again. But I think that's it. I think we've covered everything. Yeah, pretty succinct, pretty short. But I do want to say that I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. I'll be out there. Add me on Instagram between now and then. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, I'm completely available to you. And it's mind-blowing that people actually want to hear what I have to say, actually, guys. So it's pretty cool.
No, thank you for taking time tonight, Rico, and coming online and just giving that quick chat about all the things we've been doing lately.
Anything for you, Jim?
Yeah, I wish I'd known this sort of information when I was riding, because I've always known I'm like a high sweater, like as Paul obviously knows as well. He always got me.
Yeah.
But it's turned out I'm quite a low salt sweater. So although I sweat a lot, not a lot of salt was coming out. So I was quite lucky in that way.
What was your measurement with the salt?
I think I was 800.
Oh, okay, so just below average, yeah.
Yeah, luckily.
Who was high? There was one person who was really high, wasn't there?
Yeah, Dan Mundell was 1,500.
Yeah. Well, he's not coming anyway.
He doesn't sweat at all, or obviously sweats, but very little, luckily. And yeah, so that's how he sort of gets away with it. But yeah, I wish I'd sort of known and could have been better prepared.
Yeah. It's all Heinz. Yeah, so that's quite interesting what you said, actually. So if someone was a normal salt sweater at, let's say, 1,000, but their sweat volume was relatively low, you could have someone with half the salt ratio, but they sweat twice as much. You're pretty much in the same boat salt-wise per hour. So that, like I said, it's just a couple of pieces of information I think you guys should learn. And like I said before, I think enduro is a little bit late to the party with sports science and strength and conditioning and stuff. And I think over the next few years, you're going to see teams starting to, adopt performance coaches. And I think the level is going to rise, especially with a bit more money going into it now. It's actually a really popular sport. I was at the GP in Riot and I couldn't believe how many people turned out. It was really good. You don't see that many at a downhill event or a rally or something, really. It's brilliant. So, yeah, again, I look forward to seeing you all. And if you need anything, add me on Instagram and reach out and I'll help you the best I can.
One more thing, Rico, before I forget. Our plan, when we're out there, we're going to weigh our riders every night, and we to make sure
Yeah.
nobody's sort of losing weight over the course of the week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be weighing the riders in the morning and in the afternoon or in the evening, just trying to gather as much information as possible, especially over those track walk days, because that can give you an insight into the next week. You don't want, like I said before, you don't want to be playing catch up. And I think those track walk days could catch you out. I think if you weren't taking those seriously, you could burn a lot of energy and already be in a deficit going into that race. It's going to be quite a physical walk, isn't it?
Yeah, just one last thing.
Told.
If that do have your cameras on, if you could just crack a smile for like 2 seconds so I can do a screenshot, because I did this before and everyone looked so depressed.
Yeah, it was bad, wasn't it? You didn't give anyone any notice. And I think it was...
There you go, you'll look...
It was Lib or something who was just down like an Ewok at the bottom.
It looked really bad. No, you'll look quite happy to be here, so thanks.
Are you taking a photo, you Tild?
Yeah, I've done it.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, that's it, guys. Unless anyone's got anything else, if you want to speak to me privately, like I said, reach out on Instagram, and look forward to seeing you all there. So,
Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Jim.
Guys, bye-bye. Bye.
4 minutes to go.